everybody and welcome back to my channel. A couple weeks ago I asked you all to send me in questions to do a Q&A video. Well, I got so many of them that I decided to split it into two parts. If you want to see part 1, check out last week's video. So let's get right to part 2. Now Ashley Caban asks me, do you grow facial hair? And if no, when did it stop? And how do you feel about it? I mean, certainly I grew hair before my transition. I mean, I had a full-on beard at one point, but it was probably one of the first steps I took, and I spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars getting rid of as much of it as I could. For trans women, the estrogen does not stop growth of your facial hair. As for whether I do still grow facial hair, yeah, the truth is I actually do. As much money as I've spent, I haven't got rid of all of it. And it can be frustrating, make me feel less feminine to do a little bit of shaving in the morning, but you know what? I think a lot of women do that. There isn't a lot of it left, and when it does grow, it's white, so you really can't see it. I mean, I can let it grow for quite a long time and nobody would notice. It isn't like a, full-on beard or anything like that. Now, as for hair in other parts of my body, it actually did slow it down, like the hair in my arms and the hair in my chest. It pretty much all went away. There's still a little bit left. I think one of the misconceptions trans women have before they start their own transitions is that women are hairless, and obviously we're not. Alright, Dr. Grukar McNinja Sixth Gun says, did anything about SRS make you unsure about undergoing it? Either with the procedure itself, cost, maybe the aftercare, or the possibility of something going awry. Had something gone wrong during the procedure, what do you think you would have done? I think the thing that made me hesitate, and I think it makes a lot of trans people hesitate in general, is the possibility of losing the ability to orgasm afterwards. But I knew I was in the hands of a world-class surgeon, so that part didn't make me nervous. And the cost really didn't make me nervous because I specifically took a job that had insurance that I knew would cover the procedure. I firmly believe that if you really want the surgery, you can do it. It's just about the steps you're willing to take to get it done. In my case, that meant taking a minimum wage job for 1.5 years just to get my surgery covered. And I would do it again tomorrow if I had to. And yeah, was there a possibility of something going wrong? Certainly. In fact, I've known some people where it did go wrong. But even with the knowledge of what could happen, I still would have done it because I was so desperate. I can't even explain or really convey how desperate I was. Except to say that if I hadn't done it, I am 99% sure that I wouldn't be here today. Okay, JG's question is, how do you explain the difference between gender identity and sexual orientation to those who fail to understand? I understand the difference, but I'm curious as to how you explain it to people who ask, why not just stay a man? No, I did not transition because I wanted to sleep with men. And transition isn't about sex. And by that I mean who you want to have sex with. And yeah, if it was only about who I want to have sex with, I would have stayed a man because I was attracted to women before my transition and I'm attracted to women after my transition. And to kind of illustrate what I mean, what I sometimes tell people is the following. Imagine I were to take your brain out of your body and then just plop it in the body of the opposite sex. Everything about you is the same. Your thoughts, your fears, your attractions. Would you then look down at your body and go, oh, it's perfectly okay. I'm still attracted to men, or I'm still attracted to women? I think the answer to that obviously would be no. You wouldn't be okay with that situation. You would probably be very desperate to get back in the body of the sex with which you identify. And in fact, what you've just described is the feeling of gender dysphoria for transgender people. It is something I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. Aubrey Robinson asks, what was your very first crush? I assume you meant to ask who was my very first crush. And my very first crush was on a girl named Stephanie in elementary school. And she was so cute. Oh my God. And I actually used to deliver the newspaper to her house. And one day I actually kind of arranged to meet up with her and she seemed to be excited about doing it, but I think her father put a stop to that. So I got stood up and I'm not quite sure why that happened, although I suspect it's because I was a Hispanic kid living in a non-Hispanic neighborhood who delivered the newspaper. There were probably some prejudices going on there and they didn't know that in the future I would go to Princeton University and I would have this successful YouTube channel. Now Dawn Ennis asks, can you get wet without lubricant? Well, I did say ask me anything, so I will answer this. And the answer to that is actually yes, I do. However, it's a little more complicated than that. I don't have, and I think they're called Bartholin's and Skene's glands that most women have at the opening to their vagina, which kind of eases the insertion of things, let's say. Now inside my vagina itself, I do actually get wet. A lot of the same mechanisms are at play in cisgender women and transgender women there. I also, of course, don't have a cervix, and from what I understand in cisgender women, that actually provides some lubrication as well. So in most cases when I'm having sex with somebody, in order for it to feel comfortable, I do use a lubricant. However, there have been some times when I've gotten really excited and the girl is going down on me and something like that, where everything is already kind of lubed up naturally and I don't need any lubricant. Aubrey Robinson actually asks me another question and she says, what was your favorite toy growing up? As a child of the 80s, being a tomboy, my favorite were He-Man action figures and Hot Wheels. LOL, I don't know why my mom tried to buy me Barbies, I just made them date He-Man. Well, I was a kid in the 70s and the 80s, and my favorite toys were actually things like Hot Wheels and action figures. There was quite some time when I actually didn't think I was transgender because I wasn't attracted to stereotypical female things growing up. I didn't like Barbies either. But at some point it dawned on me that if I had been born in a female body and I'd acted the same way I do now, I would probably have been labeled a tomboy, and then at some point people would have suspected I was a lesbian. And in my mind that makes a kind of sense. Now Ashley asks me, was there ever a point you kind of just assumed you would like men because you were transitioning to being a woman? Or ever had a bi-curious phase? No, I actually never assumed that I would be attracted to men, but I also never assumed that I would stay attracted to only women. And certainly there have been plenty of cases where people have switched their sexual attractions, where before transition they were attracted to one sex and then afterwards they were attracted to the other. And I fully accepted before my transition that yeah, that could be a possibility in my case, although I also suspected it wouldn't be. And it turned out I was right. And no, I've never been bi-curious. I've never gone out on a date with a man, and I've never had sex with a man. Now, have I been curious about what that might be like? Sure I have, but never enough to make me actually go do it. Ooh, and now this really complex question from Taylor Lynn Carter, which asks, how do society's normative gender roles affect your gender identity? When you are transitioning, are you then conforming to society's gender roles? How do these roles affect your day-to-day life? Well, I would say normative gender roles actually played almost no influence on my gender identity. I'm actually quite comfortable looking, dressing, and even acting in a somewhat masculine way by society standards, even in my new female life. I don't wear a lot of makeup, I go out in shorts and a t-shirt, I put my hair in a ponytail. I don't have to be all these like traditionally feminine things. And I didn't transition just so I could. In fact, it was a big moment for me when I realized that I was going to transition no matter what I would look like or appear like later on. I had a deep fear at one point that I was just transitioning just so I could wear these feminine clothes afterwards. But I suddenly realized this was something I had to do, even if it meant that for the rest of my life I would just have to wear sweatpants and sweatshirts. It's who I am inside, not because I want to fulfill some sort of social stereotype. As for my day-to-day life, yeah, these gender normative roles do really affect me. Being seen as a cisgender woman means a lot of times these kinds of views are thrust upon me. So I have to deal with a lot of the crap that a lot of other women do. Sometimes it means being patronized by men and being expected to defer to them. And I think for trans women, sometimes we feel this more sharply than anybody because we know what it was like to be on the other side of that fence. If I could have one wish for society, I think it would be for everybody to be able to live as the opposite sex for a little while. And I do mean just for a little while, unless of course you wanted to stay that way. But I would think it brings such a greater understanding of what it means to be human in this world that the effects would be incredibly positive.